Your Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Somich and Mr. Stress-Free Ratanjit S. Sondhe. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
I would like to welcome you to Stress-Free Living. I'm Ray Somich, and it's my pleasure and honor and privilege to introduce all of you to my co-host, my dear friend, Ratanjit Sondhe. Ratanjit, how are you today?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
I am excellent, thank you, and really enjoy being with you. We'd like to welcome all of our Zoom guests that are with us here from all over the world, and also anybody who's listening to us on the radio, on the internet stream, or at our YouTube channel, Stress-Free Living Radio, which is on YouTube. And there's many, many shows, many dozens of shows that have been edited and put up there, hopefully for people to enjoy and for you to share with your friends. So if you enjoy watching any particular show and you want to share it, it's so easy to do on the YouTube channel. Ratanjit, I think this is a really interesting topic today that you have come up with, because self-confidence and ego, as one of our guests just said a moment ago talking with us, is such a thin line between the two of those. We want our children to be self-confident. We admire people who have self-confidence. We wish we had more self-confidence. And yet, ego is kind of a nasty word. We don't want people to have ego. We don't like people who have ego. If our children exhibit signs of being egotistical, we try to talk to them and reel them back so they don't have an ego. And yet we want them to have self-confidence. What's really the difference? Is there a difference? Are we just calling the same thing by two different names? Or is there a level of self-confidence that can lead to having ego? It's really curious. What do you think?
Well, see, there is arrogance. Of course, everybody knows that is part in ego. So when it is, that is also part of confidence. And ego generally is tied to your title, or your, ultimately is all tied to your insecurity and fear of failures. So you create a wall around you and you project that, no, I'm a very confident person. And self-confidence is, what I'm going to say is, you have to stop and think, is expectation of ego.
I'm not sure what that means. We'll have to talk about it.
Expectation of ego means you are confident that I'll be able to do this. But see, imagine if you are a basketball player like James. LeBron. So, he has won everything. He's an amazing player. So when he goes on the field, is it his confidence which makes him play such a great game? See, confidence comes from your past history, past performance. You have won some games, it gives you confidence. You have gotten a degree, you have knowledge, it gives you confidence. If you have skills, it gives you confidence. Ultimately, there are certain things a person does consecutively, it converts into habits. Those habits also gives you confidence. But when you go in the field, when you are playing a basketball game, of course, you can score. Of course, you know the rules. But to win the game, does that depends on confidence? Because your success comes not from your confidence. Confidence is part in past. Success comes from playing or living in the present. So if you had a bad shot, if LeBron had a bad shot, now, and he had consecutively 3 bad shots, so it can affect his confidence, right?
Oh, definitely.
Right. Now, to get out of that paradigm, he has to come back and play in the present. In other words, he has to let go of the memory of those 3 bad shots.
Right.
So then only he can play and win the game. So that is not the confidence. That self-confidence, which world sees as self-confidence, is really comes from when you are parked in the present.
All right. So you've had some interesting comments there, but I'm still totally lost. Let's go with a sports analogy, and let's switch to, I think, even a better sports analogy than a basketball shot is what we see if we watch football in America, where the kicker only has to kick a few times in a game. But when they usually kick for a field goal in football, the game is usually like a lot of times it's on the line, like they do it with 2 seconds left in the game. And they even try to, what they call in the game, ice the kicker. They take an extra timeout to try to make him think about how hard this is going to be and how important this kick is, because one play, one kick means the difference between a victory and a loss for the team. So it's a real critical example of having confidence in the moment. And they often talk about in the fact in the game, he's already missed 2 kicks or he's already made every kick. So how does that psychologically play out in his brain that now it's all on the line? He's got one chance. This is for all the marbles, as they say, and they do everything they can to affect his self-confidence, to make him think that he's not going to be able to do this. So you can really zone in then to say, this player is a professional. He's in the top 1% of the world at what he does. And yet, does he have the self-confidence to do, again, what he's done thousands of times before and kick it through get the points? So is there, I almost think in those cases, you want him to have a little ego. You want him to have that assurity that he can do that kick, that he can withstand the stress and the pressure and overcome the doubt, the self-doubt, that he can absolutely do it. So is that a good example of where ego can be positive? Where
it's the other way around, Ray. If he has ego, it does not give him self-confidence. When his whole thing, the team's victory, the whole trophy is online, and it is all based on that one player.
Right.
He goes in there, he lets go of his ego, he becomes humble, he connects to, if he believes in any faith, he connects to his God and say, God, please give me energy, give me this thing so that I can score. That is absolutely not self-confidence. That is coming from his inner prayer, which connects him to the power within him. It brings creative energies, it channels him to score that thing. And afterwards, after he has scored, he then goes back into ego. So, look, I did it. And he raises his hand. So, gosh, I'm. So everybody says, oh, gosh, you are great. What confidence. But that is not confidence. That is humility. Until the person becomes humble, at that point, he will not be able to bring his highest creativity, which comes from his connection to the power, intrinsic power within him.
Okay, makes sense. So you discounted both ego and self-confidence in that example. You say both of those were not a part of that, right? Okay, so by nullifying both of them, are you telling us that you think, we know ego is not good. Are you telling us that self-confidence also is not good?
But see, self-confidence is after the fact. That is why it is part in history. People remind you, gosh, you have done this, and oh yeah, I've done this. So when you are undertaking a task and you have a history of performing that task many times, so you have less fear. But if supposing you are a neurosurgeon operating on brain, it's a complicated case. And going into that case, does the confidence plays a part? Yes, he or she has done that surgery many times, and she knows, she has the skills, she has everything. And at that point, until that doctor goes in the present and parks herself or himself in a purpose of making that right moves, that has nothing to do with confidence. That has all to do with the creative power within them and tied to a purpose of making a correct move. So our confidence is, after the surgery is done perfectly well and it is very successful, we take pride in it. And that is ego again. It comes back. It's like the example I've given when you are a musician, you are playing in Carnegie Hall, you are a world-class pianist. So you are playing, so when you go on the stage and you are ready to play, until you have goosebumps in your thing, and you are a little bit nervous, you will not be able to play your best. You will be ordinary if you are playing through confidence. When you are let go of your confidence and connect to intrinsic energy through a prayer, you really are nervous a little bit, your performance does not peak. So confidence is really an overstated thing.
So I think I'm following this, but I want to break this down because I think there's three different levels then that we're talking about. One is self-confidence. There is, based on what you said, there is a difference to ego. So I want to discuss those two. And then I want to discuss that, let's call it performing in the moment. Okay, let's call it. So there's three different levels. There's having self-confidence, there's being egotistical, having ego, showing ego, and then there's living in the moment, performing in the moment. Let's go back and talk about self-confidence more, because what I hear you saying, I think, is that we develop self-confidence based on what we have done previously. Right. So maybe it's what we've learned in the classroom, or maybe what we've actually done ourselves. I have many occasions where I have been asked to be on stage and emceeing, narrating, things like that. And it is true. I'm trying to think about this personally. When I'm preparing, I'm saying, well, I did this before. I've said these words before. I've been in this front of this audience before. It's certainly, all of those characteristics certainly do help me to be self-confident that I'm going to do it okay, because I've done this or this or this part of it before. So I can appreciate that. I can't remember the first time I was on stage, the very first time. I can't remember. It's been so many years ago. Are you saying that I probably, because I had never done that before, I probably didn't have any self-confidence that first time? The first time that you do anything, it's impossible to have self-confidence?
See, if when you are going there on the stage, in your case, you have done this before, when you're reminding yourself that I have done this before, so Ray, don't get nervous and you can do it, all that. What are you doing? You are removing your insecurities. You are removing your failure to fail by talking to yourself that you have done it. Be confident, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So
yeah, you have nothing to fear. You've done this before, right?
Yeah. So it's
Right.
not confidence. It is, and confidence is just a thing we use. Is always ego, fear, play of these things. See, ultimately, when you think of it, you think of three things which gives you what you call as confidence. That past, that means you have done this before. Second, you have the skills. Third, you depend on the habits. When a basketball or a tennis player plays, they go into habits. So
Right.
when the ball comes, it automatically hits. So their focus and those three things help us achieve that. But really, to excel that, you have to have a higher, you have to have a desire, you have to have a purpose, you have to have an ambition, you have to accept the challenge. See, until you accept the challenge, if you are speaking in a conference and you really want to convey a point, there are three reasons for you to deliver a lecture. One is just as an MC, you are facilitating the event. Or second is you are showing off that you have done this before. Thirdly, you have a message and you want to convey that message, a powerful message, not about you, but to transform the listeners. When you are focusing on the message, all your other things get aligned. So when you are winning a match for your country, it's beyond your getting a trophy for yourself. It has a higher purpose.
Right.
So once you are in that higher purpose mode, your performance gets enhanced.
So I love that. We'll come back on that as part of performing in the moment, okay, of the three different ways that I kind of divided it up. I want to go back to the self-confidence level, because in a way, as you were talking, you almost said that it doesn't exist. You were almost using words like self-confidence is a myth. Okay, the way you were talking, like it's we kind of fool ourselves into saying it's self-confidence, but it's really just understanding that we've been here before, so we have nothing to be afraid of. Is that
removing the fear, removing your
Okay.
doubts? And that is not coming through confidence. That is coming through, I have done this before, part in the history. I have the skills to do it. And because I have done this, I have habits. Automatically my words will come to me, or if I'm playing a game, my hands and my coordination of my limbs are going to be there because they are part in the habit.
so that's based when we have been through something before, there's truth to that. There's fact to that.
Yes.
So, I've kicked this football 1,000 times before. I know that I can kick it 1,001 times. I've been on the stage before. I've taken this test before. Whatever it is in our life, I have done this before, so I know I can do it again. So that's why it's not ego, because it's not anything that's telling us, we can do something we can't, or we're better than we are. We're simply removing the fear of the future because of what we've done in the past. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it is. But if you are based in your ego and you are going in there, so you say, yeah, I'm great. I'm going to do it. I've done it. I'm the greatest player. And under that circumstances, you are going to jeopardize your own performance.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, because I think we've hit that fine line here. We've hit that fine line between what we call self-confidence, which is maybe just an absence of fear, an absence of insecurity based on knowing that we've done it. Where does that cross over to being egotistical? What is that difference between me just saying, I know I can do this, I've done it before, and how does that become ego for some people? That's what we're going to come back. I tease you on that one so you can have your answer ready. We are on Stress-Free Living. We're so glad that you're with us, talking about the difference between self-confidence and ego. And Ratanjit has introduced the third idea of not needing either one, just living in the moment. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we're at a break. We can open up mics if anybody has any comments already for us. We've got about 90 seconds.
Well, can you touch on the topic that once anybody's in ego, the learning process in his mind stops?
Yes.
And that is the very critical point, because if one has to be in a constant mode of learning, and the ego immediately closes the mind.
Are you saying leveling? Is that the word you're using?
No, closing.
No.
The ego learning. The
learning. I'm sorry. Learning. Okay. Learning stops. Okay. Learning stops.
Because
okay, yes.
We are always in a mode of learning from everything, from every kick. Even if it is 1,000 times he has kicked the football, the 1,001 might be another experience. So that learning process stops if it is in an ego mode.
Very good. Okay, yes, definitely we'll bring that up. Good thought.
So Ray, Steve Marsh
Yes.
here.
Yes.
So when you approach those things, it's really about your experience. Every time, whether you're kicking a football, whether you're preparing a tooth, it doesn't matter. You've learned from experience, and you need to put that into effect when you are treating that next thing, when you're kicking it. And it isn't so much about ego or confidence. It's, here's my experience. I will try to do the best I can on this particular thing. And you don't want your overconfidence, like, oh, I'm going to make it. But if you go, no one goes into those situations. You don't go onto a stage, say, well, I'm the greatest. If you do, it will hinder it. So I think everything you're doing is based on your experience. And at that moment, how are you going to let that experience come into play when you are performing, when you're meeting someone, whatever? And whether it's ego or that, it's almost immaterial. It's bringing that experience to.
All right, we are back on Stress-Free Living, talking as we usually do on our breaks with our Zoom guests, and we encourage you to do that as well. If you'd like to join us live on these shows, then please do check out the links that are on our Facebook page, also at YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or at our WINT website. And you can join us, and we can talk with you in between the breaks, and especially after the show. We open it up. Sometimes we have gone on for a long time after the show with continuing the thoughts. Ratanjit, a couple of those I want to pass on before we get to what I was going to plan to do. Two different interesting thoughts that came through. One is, when we're talking about this first level, which is self-confidence, then one of our guest here talked about that really coming down to having the experience. If we've done something in the past, then we now feel more confident about being able to do it in the future. So the confidence is really just another words for the experience that we have gained in doing that before. And so because we have that experience, we've done it before, we tell our bodies, we tell our brains, more importantly, you can do this again. You have the experience to do it. Is it that simple? Is that word that, that basically the entire essence of our self-confidence is based on the experiences that we've already had?
That's what we generally consider, that, okay, I have experience, I have confidence that I'll be able to do that. Basically, if you realize what that reminder does, it tells me I'm not going to fail. I can do this again. That
Okay.
past experience basically takes away the hesitation and the fear of failure. We are
so the
always
first,
parked in the fear of failures.
so the first time that we ever do anything, if we don't have experience, okay, let's take something simple. We've been talking like critical things, but let's say it's something stupid like bungee jumping, okay? And I've never done that. I will never do that. But I watch the videos of people that are bungee jumping. They come off a big mountain or a really high spot, and they have this rope and they're holding onto the rope. A lot of people do that for the first time. I mean, that's not something that everybody has to do that for the first time. It's not something that you can learn in a classroom. It's not something that you can have any experience with unless you actually do it. Okay. So is everybody afraid then that first time, or is there a way that you can be self-confident about yourself because you're that kind of a personality that can experience something new and still not be afraid of it? How does that fit into that self-confident?
Well, we all have different kind of a level of fear and different level of our aggressiveness to try new things. So it depends on whether you are more afraid or less afraid. So people who are trying these exotic things, they get a kick out of it. Our system gives a hormone which gives us a exciting feeling, and that is why a lot of people go into situations which are fearful and be able to overcome and do those things. So that is nothing to do with confidence. This is also a ego kick that I have done this.
Okay, so let's move on to the second. That makes sense. I think I just want to clarify just to make sure I get it. So we've been talking about the experience that we have that gives us the confidence to be able to go and do things again. So we're almost using experience and self-confidence interchangeably for anything that we've been through in the past. And that way, it is an ego at that point. It's just assurance that we've done it before. We feel more secure about it. We don't have a fear of it. And then when I brought up something like bungee jumping, you said that's kind of a little different because then we get the hormones that the body produces for us and the excitement of a challenge, of something new. So it's kind of a pseudo confidence there just because the body takes over and says, yes, this is exciting. This is invigorating. You've always wanted to do this. Go for it. So that's a little different topic that we're not going to go and veer off too much on that today, but that might be an interesting show to see how we can live with that adrenaline and if that is viable to live your life that way. But for the distinction between ego and self-confidence again, okay, one of our visitors, our guests, said it comes down to learning. Are we in the learning mode Do we think that we still need to learn? Is that the difference? Is that going to be the difference between the two? When we're self-confident, we're secure, we're not afraid, but we're still willing to learn. We're still willing to see what we can do. Whereas if you have ego, you don't need to do that anymore. You feel like you know it all.
Well, when you are in ego mode, you really do not learn. You are in ego means I know it. I've done it. I can do it with my hand tied, and people talk about that. And so that is ego. That is, you really do not learn. But life is a continuous growth, continuous learning. And that is why we have to remain in the student mode. And student mode, the essential thing is to keep our mind open, to be able to connect to the situation around us. When we are in the ego mode, in our brain, our mirror neurons and all that do not move. So in the ego mode, we freeze our mind. To invigorate our thought process, our mind, we have to remain in the learning mode, in the humble mode. When you are a student, when you sit and listen to a situation, when you see the environment for the first time, every time, you learn more. Otherwise, you have seen the things, oh, I know it, I've seen it. Whereas anything, Ray, when you look at it second time or hundredth time or thousandth time, you can still find something new. And you can still learn from it. That is why we are on the path of continuous growth. That continuous growth stops when you have this egoic confidence.
Egoic confidence. Okay. We've all been in situations, I would guess, where we've talked to somebody that has just performed marvelously, or maybe not just, maybe we know that they have been very successful. They're very good at something. And when we talk with them, they are still humble. They are still gracious. And we don't sense an ego. And then there's other people that we talk to, or maybe even that same person in a different setting. And now their ego is almost overwhelming. We just sense that they have just this almost arrogance about them in terms of their talent and their abilities and their successes. So it's pretty easy for us to see it in others. We can sense that difference. How do we, back to first person, how can we make sure that we don't go over that line? How do we make sure and be double sure that we don't go from having experience, confidence, no insecurities, to adding the high insecurity ego mode? How can we stay and not cross over that line so that we don't show that ego?
Well, see, truth is that no exceptions, all our successes are in spite of us. Never, never, never because of us. Because this human body, we don't control. Sometimes it has its own pains and aches and work. So when everything works all harmoniously, then ultimate success comes. And everything, we do not control the situations. So when we take credit for everything, we are really not in the right we are in the ego mode. I have done this. So if you tell me any success which you have achieved alone, nobody has helped you. Give me any example.
Let's say that there's a superb athlete, okay? A superb athlete that his whole life or her whole life, they've gone to a gym, they've worked out, they've fine-tuned their body to the absolute highest level of strength, of performance. Their diet, they have been really stringent about their diet and strict about it so that they only eat everything exactly what they should in exactly the right proportions at exactly the right time of the day to be just that perfect physical specimen of low body fat and muscle and endurance and speed and all those different factors, so that they are a world-class athlete and they win 10 gold medals in the Olympics. That person, usually now feels like they have done that. I mean, they worked for 5 years or for 20 years at building their body to be at that absolute peak performance level. Isn't that an example of them doing it, not in spite of themselves, but because of what they've done?
See, they, at that point, the day of performance, if there was a virus which could have made the body cripple or undermine the body, they would have not won the game. Or if the right circumstances were not there, right frame of mind was not there, right situation was not there, they would have not. And this human body is also a gift to us. Its performance. And see, Ray, you look at these basketball players. They have all the similar skills. They have the similar physique. There's very little difference. When a championship going on between two teams, any team can win. Why does the winning team actually comes out with the trophy? Because right circumstances. If the pass was given at the right moment, at the right time, or there are so many circumstances which happen we can't even imagine.
Right.
And so that is why all our successes are in spite of us, never because of us. We can never predict 100% what is going to be the outcome.
Well, to that point, there's been many, many times where what has been evaluated as the best team or the best performer doesn't win because certain circumstances happened that prevented that from happening. And the experts are surprised because this is the best quality, this is the best, the best athletes or whatever it might be, or the best coach team, and yet they failed, they didn't win. So that proves your point. It is on any given day, something could happen that we don't have control of. I guess to the point of control, I mean, we don't really have control of anything around us, right? I mean, something can happen every day. There's been many times where we expected something to go a certain way because it was logical that something would happen, and it didn't go that way because of circumstances beyond our control. I mean, that's part of acceptance that we've done shows on, because it's like, this doesn't make sense. This should never have happened, but it did.
So that's why we have to come out not with confidence after our victory. We have to be grateful after our victories, grateful for our successes, grateful for achievements, because ultimately the circumstances came together for us to achieve those victories or those successes.
So when we go back to the idea of experience again, then, are you saying that the experience also includes gratefulness for the fact that those experiences were good? those experiences had good results. So I have gratefulness for that.
I was given the chance to experience that itself, we should be grateful. And then there are other side of it. Supposing you have been very successful in business, you have built an empire. Does that give you guarantee that next venture you'll be successful?
No,
Not really.
no, not at all.
But until you become a student again and notice every situation and serve every situation to the maximum capability of your creativity, then only success can be expected, not guaranteed.
There's been so many CEOs, you see the big stories in the business publications that had tremendous success elevating companies to the highest level. And then they hire them at a new company and they pay them just crazy $100 million a year to change to a different company. And within a year they fail and they kick them out and they put somebody else in. I mean, you know, you can imagine as a CEO, there are so many circumstances that have to go right. So many aspects of the whole package that have to be done a certain way. So that proves your point right there. You know, you could have tremendous success, but if there's a lot of circumstances that don't go right, that does not assure anything in the future. We've been talking more about self-confidence for ourselves, for individual accomplishments that we do. And I think the distinction between self-confidence and ego is starting to become more clear to me. Replacing self-confidence with a lack of insecurity or a lack of fear. Okay. Interesting that you always talk about ego as being overwhelming insecurity that causes us to have ego.
Right.
So by that conversation, by that definition, we have really separated self-confidence from ego, because self-confidence can only be there if we have security in our performance and no fear. And ego is there when we have all kinds of insecurity and we have ego. So we need to take another break. I want to come back and talk about what I've just said to see if that makes sense as I've spoken it. How do we go from a level? How do we say there's two things that are on the surface seem so similar, having confidence and being ego, and yet one is only there with no insecurity and one is there with a ton of insecurity? All right, that's an interesting separation there. We're going to come back and talk about that in just a moment on this edition of Stress-Free Living. Stay with us. All right, we have about 90 seconds here before we come back on. And we have a couple of new people that have joined us. We welcome you. Anybody have any quick thoughts? Sorry, I had to cut you off there last time, Doctor. Anybody have any quick thoughts? Uh-oh. I think everybody falls asleep. There we go. Go, Doug.
Thought.
Hi, Doug.
Yeah.
It's as always, I think of things very just basic stuff, and Ratanjit goes very deep with all of it. And, you know, I think self-confidence is really good. To me, it's just good. It's good to have self-confidence. And I always think of ego as a negative. I always think of, when you think of somebody, oh, their ego, it always comes out as a negative feeling with me. So I can't go much deeper than that, although self-confidence can be a little bit of a problem also. Someone can be so self-confident that they try something that gets them in trouble. If you will, oh, I could do that, you know, when they haven't done it before, and boom, they get in trouble. But anyway, that's my quick thought.
All right, very good. Thank you. Anybody else with anything to add? All right, I guess they're with us here. We're coming back in a moment here anyway. Oh, still got a couple seconds left. Hello, Kai and Gim, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Missed
We
you
are
guys.
back on Stress-Free Living. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, talking with our Zoom guest here in between that we are so honored to have with us every week. Ratanjit, I had asked you a strange question because it's strange for me as I even say the words, because we talk about self-confidence and ego in one way being so similar, and yet we've just been talking today about you have self-confidence when you talk yourselves out of fear, when you talk yourself out of being insecure, so you're very confident in yourself and you have no insecurity, so you can perform based on your experience. And then we talk about ego, and we know that ego is only there when you have tremendous insecurity. So how do we bridge that gap? Why are self-confidence and ego almost the same, and yet they're actually almost opposites? One is a total lack of insecurity to be self-confident, and one is total insecurity to be ego.
Well,
Does that make sense? How does that even happen?
well, see, what I'm going to say is going to throw everything off again.
Oh, no.
You cannot have self-confidence, the true self-confidence, until you find yourself. Everything we call self-confidence otherwise is a reflection or expectation of ego. Until you know who you are, how are you going to have self-confidence? If supposing you met with an accident, you lost your memory, you don't know anything, your confidence is gone. So in our life, we experience certain things, and we have done few things a couple of times, or whether it's a game or whatever it is. So what we acquire is a temporary pseudo confidence. Oh, I've done this, I can do this again. But your true self-confidence does not come until you realize who you truly are, right? That's where your true self-confidence comes from. Because then you are connected to the power within you, and that power allows you to do things which you have not done before. And as a consequence, you have that, I don't know whether we want to call it a confidence, but you have a desire to be able to do those things. You have power, you have internal force which allows you to do certain things which otherwise are not possible. So that is the true confidence. That is the true self-confidence.
So we always talk about this being a journey. And I admit for myself, it's been a 25-year journey of talking with you almost every week. And I don't feel I'm still there. I mean, I still feel like I'm learning, I'm getting closer, but sometimes I have big setbacks on this journey. So to say that any self-confidence is just really because I know who I am is a little bit hard to believe, because I don't know who I really am yet. I'm still on that journey of figuring that out. And I think it's a lifelong journey for most of us. For you, you've accomplished that. But for most of us, we get closer some days and we get further other days. And it's a continuous path. I told you earlier about a gentleman that I met this week that came up to me and talked, and he's been a longtime listener. And he was really quick to say, I'm on that journey. I'm still not there yet of knowing who I am, but I'm on that journey. And I think that's the positive place that we want to be on that journey. So is what this means then? Are those just flashes? If we experience that self-confidence, are those just flashes of knowing who we are? And even if we're on that journey and if we haven't attained that yet, should we take some consolation in those flashes of that of that concept that we can be there permanently, we can reach that destination?
Well, see, Ray, when you are confronted with a challenge, although you have done these things, whether it is a championship match or against a big team or a brain surgery performed by the doctor, which is the most complicated case which has never been done in history. So all those earlier experience only gives you a pseudo confidence. So at that point, when you accept that challenge, knowingly or unknowingly, you get connected to your own self, the inner being, the inner power which enlivens you. And that is where the unprecedented performance comes out of you. And that is not confidence. That is connecting to the power within you, connecting to your true self. So at that point, that self-confidence which you talk about happens. But that happens when you take on that challenge and when you let go of your ego and you intrinsically have a desire to go deep and come out with that energy which is present within you, that creativity, this is present within you. That is why there have been instances a human being has been able to perform tasks which are completely unexpected of human beings. So that is not confidence. That is not coming from confidence. The worldly confidence can only give you mediocrity. Yeah, you are going to routinely able to repeat what you have done. And if you want to call that confidence, yeah, but that is not the ultimate confidence. Self-confidence comes from connecting to your true self, which is within you.
So we almost have to, it's kind of an irony there, isn't it? We almost have to connect to the fact that we're not in control and that we really, anything that happens in spite of us, not because of us.
Right.
So we almost have to be grounded in
Gratefulness.
Zero confidence almost in ourselves, right? In order to be confident in ourselves, we almost have to take that down to say we're nothing without that power that enlivens us.
Absolutely.
So, kind of in other words, instead of saying confidence, it's almost like we have to be dead before we can become alive.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which I mean, to think that that's the only way that we can be powerful is to admit that we're almost dead, or the only way that we can be confident is to admit that we really are nothing.
So see, now
there's an incredible irony there.
There is a caution here. If you want to connect to yourself, to be powerful, to be better than others, you won't be able to connect it to yourself.
If that's the goal, if that's the purpose, you mean?
Yeah, that's the purpose. That is ego-driven purpose.
Yeah.
But if it is, purpose is to serve, purpose is to save somebody's life, purpose is to give unconditionally, then only you are able to connect to that power within you.
I know this is simple, but it's also very complicated. So no wonder it's a journey. No wonder it takes years and years to really understand this. But I think today has gone a long way in that for us. And I hope that our viewers, our listeners have enjoyed the conversation and hope that it has added value to your life. Ratanjit, thank you as always for sharing your thoughts and your love and your wisdom with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
And we thank you for joining us, however you have done that. And once again, please share our YouTube channel, Stress Free Living radio channel, with your friends. Many, many shows are up there, and we hope that you can go back and listen to those over and over again, as I have been prone to do, because sometimes once is not enough to listen to these things. So many times I have to listen to them over and over again. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again real soon.